Would like to call to order City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission meeting for Thursday, May 12th, 2022. And we do have a quorum. I've spoken with Joe. And Joe, do we need to read a statement?
No, sir.
All right.
Those days are over.
Great.
And may they never return.
Amen.
Don't jinx this, Jerry. Okay. I am assuming that everyone received the minutes from Joe and had a moment to take a look at them, make some revisions. Does anyone have any comment or concern on the minutes for April?
Mr. President, I do.
Okay.
Under new business,
Yes.
number 1, Trades District Preliminary Design and Engineering Proposals.
Yes.
Commission did not, the motion was not to approve HWC engineering. Rather, the motion was to permit the initiation of negotiation of the scope of work.
That is correct. I confirm that.
Okay.
So,
It's the next to the last sentence under number 1.
right. So I guess what was it says,
Zerner asked for a motion to then strike the next line completely in half of the next line. So it should be Dan Zorner asked for a motion to permit initiation of negotiation of scope of work.
No, I think, Cheryl, that was, Commissioner, I think that was actually covered in the last half, subject to the final negotiation.
scope of work and contract approved by the RDC.
Contract approved.
Right. My concern is that we did not select HWC. There was not a motion for that. I specifically asked a question about that, whether it would be brought back to the commission or approval.
So Cheryl, you're saying you asked, okay, let's go to them, see how much it's going to cost, and then bring it back to us so we can approve.
Yes. So it was asked for the motion to permit the initiation of negotiation of the scope of work. It wasn't approval of
That's true.
Okay.
firm.
We didn't have the scope of work.
That's what I was saying. Okay. I will make sure that's reflected in the final minutes, which will not be a problem. Yes.
Joe, so does that mean, well, we still need to get that scope and get,
That'll all be handled today anyway, so it doesn't matter.
okay.
She's fine.
We'll
She's fine to approve what she wants to do.
Well, yeah, you just need to.
So that'll be Cheryl's correction, or Commissioner Sullivan's correction will be, it'll be reflected in the final version of the minutes. We can go ahead and approve these with that correction, and then I'll.
Correction, I move to approve the minutes.
All right. And do we have a second?
We do.
All right, we will do a roll call vote for approval. David Blunt,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Same with claims and purchase orders. I'm assuming everyone's taken a look. Does anyone have any comment, concerns, questions on those claims or purchase orders?
I don't.
And if not,
Need a motion to approve?
I would like a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of claims and purchase orders. Roll call vote for approval. David Blunt,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll get this meeting moving. And Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you for the old business and new business, and if there's any other business to come before the commission.
Thank you, President Blond. First of all, Adam, thank you for being here again today. Covering for Bruce. Mills Supply Freegee parking update. Unfortunately, Mills has dug their heels in and is holding to the absolute degree of the language in the project agreement that requires us to give them a legally reported plat for 6 parking spaces, I believe it is. That could have been done with a permanent easement at virtually no cost. but we're going to have to go through the plating, recording exercise and handle that. That's been ongoing now for several months. They just refused to accept my suggestion that would have basically been almost immediate and permanent at no cost. So Bruce Donaldson has weighed in on it with Tim Oakes and of Ice Miller and Tom John of Ice Miller. And since Tim Oakes started this with us before Bruce came on, Bruce has requested that and suggested it'd be cheaper and easier to let Ice Miller resolve this. So I gave the notice to proceed to Ice Miller to get that plating done, and we'll just bear the cost and be done with it. But it's not been a pleasant experience. Any further questions regarding that? Pendleton Pike, 56th Street separation update. This has been on the agenda for close to 2 years. Just to remind you, that's the parcel identified in front of East Side Welding at 56th and Pendleton Pike that the city had that didn't even know they owned. That had previously a part of right-of-way that I thought would make good commercial space if we separated it. The great news is we have the conditional letter of plat approval from the Indianapolis Metropolitan Development. Now all we have to do is complete the legal description and file the final plat, and that will be over and done, and we'll be able to offer that for sale. So I would expect us to be able to offer that for sale sometime, probably July at this point in time. That's a big accomplishment to get that done, and that'll make something nice happen on that corner. So
Dan, what's that zone for?
I believe it's going to be Zone C2, I think. It's commercial.
Okay.
By the way, we'll start referring to it. It has an address actually assigned to it, 10220 Pendleton Pike.
Oh,
Great.
Next, we have the issuance of the Rdc Bonds. Adam came in early today and has secured everybody's signature. Adam, if I'm correct, the actual closing occurs on the 19th.
Correct.
And I have a note from Bob Swintz that I just want to refer you all to, and Tyler. Bob says, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to attend the meeting either in person or virtually today. As you probably know, First Merchants purchased the $2.5 million tax increment revenue bonds. We're set to close on May the 19th. The final rate was 4.15%. From the proceeds of the bonds, we'll fund a debt service reserve of $250,000. We've budgeted $100,000 for the cost of issuance. However, to the extent we do not use that much, the balance can be used for the project fund. With these assumptions, the project fund will have $2,150,000.
great.
Any
Yeah.
questions relative to that?
I'm just glad we got that taken care of because it's looking a little crazy out there.
Joe, could you be sure that level of detail on this is in the minutes?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. And we just received this letter from our financial advisor, Bob.
5 minutes before the meeting.
Yeah, so we can send a copy of that to you guys as well, so you have that in writing.
That's great, thank you.
All right, the next item under old business is Racetrack. So I have been concerned that we've not seen activity from Racetrack. About 3 weeks ago, I contacted it was after our last RDC meeting. I contacted Racetrack and expressed that frustration. And they said, well, they weren't going to start construction until December of this year or January. I said, well, at the very least, I wanted to see the demolition occur now and get those sites leveled because they're looking in such disrepair and trash is accumulating. And I think it'd be better to have bare ground with a sign that says Racetrack coming soon than having that sit there for the next 6 months, which they've agreed to do. And they have filed their demo permit requests with the city. Since that time, we've had a few more complaints about the trash building up in that property. So I contacted them again yesterday and indicated to them that we would sure appreciate their cooperation because normally what we'll do if we don't get cooperation is that we would send a contractor out, have it mowed, cleaned up, send them the bill, and if we didn't get a bill within a certain amount of days, slap a lien against the property. And amazingly enough, their director of all operations called this morning and requested a contractor, and they're proceeding to take care of that. So just wanted you to know that we are working through that, and so far they've been responsive. Next thing I'd like to do is give Joe Murphy considerable kudos relative to Drone Deck. He hosted Drone Deck with UPS officials today from about 10 o'clock to 2:30 this afternoon. UPS is in looking at Drone Deck's technology, and had a chance to learn about the city of Lawrence, and Joe was a great host to about 20-some people today. So on behalf of the RDC, I'd like to thank Joe. I'd also like to let this group know that Drone Deck has been a great partner and done a lot to say a lot of nice things about Lawrence, and got us some exposure in places we wouldn't have. But being what you hired me to do, I sent a letter of notice to Drone Deck that I wasn't satisfied with the progress on the 4223 Shadeland property. If you'll remember, they sent us beautiful pictures of what they were going to do, and the lot and the new lighting and signage, and so far all they've done is painted it an old brown and basically covered up the old windows with paint. And while the site has been cleaned up dramatically, and they've spent a lot of money cleaning it, and due to their defense, when they got in, their bar joist was all rotten and they had to replace the steel roof structure, which took months to get. They've had supply chain issues, but I put them on notice that we did have the expectation of what was to be delivered in their commitments. And so we've been hassling through that this week, but I think everybody's on the same page, and just wanted you to know I'm following that up. Under new business, the Best Equipment Lawrence expansion, I just wanted to make you aware that Best Equipment is going through a major architectural review of their facilities to try to prepare for another 20 years of growth. They're proposing a significant expansion that will be many millions of dollars, and that they will probably need some TIF bonds or something in terms of support. I think all of you that have been through the Best place and been around it understand what a critical client they are to the city of Lawrence. And I have pledged that the RDC will be there to help them and consider their needs when the timing's right. So that will be coming up probably in the next 60, 90 days.
Dan, are they considering, I know they do a lot of warehouse stuff, but are they considering more employees as
Oh, yes,
well?
considerable more employees, a whole new showroom on the front, state-of-the-art service department expansions. It's a major redo. You probably know that their daughters are both, the daughter, Jen, is actually the president of Best now, and her husband, Adam, and her sister, they're all involved, and it's just a great Lawrence story, so we want to keep that going. It's not on your agenda, but Joe and I had the pleasure this morning of touring Hammer and Grip, which is owned by a gentleman and his wife named Derek and Aaron Hammer. They're located in the Trades District at the very back road against 465, right across from Koch Mechanical.
What was the second? Hammer and what?
Grip, G-R-I-P.
Thank you.
And you would never know that this, I've been by there a lot of times, and I just assumed it was some kind of lighting. They actually make lighting for the movie industry. They have company clients all over the world. They also have a fabricating and powder coat facility. They're totally out of space, need to expand. They own a lot right across from where they are, where that all dead ends. They need several more employees. They need $2 to $4 million of expansion right now. We met with them. We toured it. It's a phenomenal tour. And I think it would be fun to take you all through that when we get a little bit closer. But I again pledge that the RDC would do what we could to help with their expansion. It's the kind of work we're here to do. I'm going to skip on the next item on your agenda down to number 3 under new business. One of the things that we do need to have done with Adam's guidance and Joe's preparation is we need to approve resolution number 2-2022, which is the resolution of the RDC of its determination need to capture tax increment revenues to keep our TIF in place. That's an annual requirement. Would you like to speak to that any further?
You summed it up perfectly, unless there's any questions.
So if it's possible, I'd like to have a motion to approve resolution number 2.
That's this, right?
That's
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So if we could get a motion to approve and pass that, I would appreciate it.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of resolution number 2-2022. We'll do a roll call vote for approval. David Blunt,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
All right, the last thing I have before this group is a monumental thing for this group. It's a big day for us, I believe, and that is the approval of HWC's engineering contract for the preliminary design of the Trades District project. I'm going to invite Brian Poehler to the podium while I speak, just so you kind of get a feel for who he is. I don't offer these words easily, and now that the selection's done, I'm going to disclose to everybody that I've worked with Brian for more than a decade. He's a Rose-Hulman engineer. We've done numerous projects together. It may sound arrogant, but I think they would back us up that Brian and I together have probably handled more than $100 million of improvements in White County in new projects similar to ours, economic development projects. He's one of the most client-oriented, I'll get a big head, he's one of the most client-oriented project engineers I've ever seen. And what I define engineering and construction companies is, I will tell you there is never a perfect project. Anybody that tells you it's a perfect project, you better run, because it just doesn't happen in construction and engineering. There's always something you can't foresee. And I always define companies as, do they become part of the problem or part of the solution when a problem occurs? And I will assure you the gentleman in front of us always is part of the solution. So with that little bit of endorsement, his firm and several of the other people that they brought with them, and some of you were in participation in that selection, HWC was selected among the two firms to provide the engineering subject to a successful negotiation of their agreement and a presentation of a work scope that the city could approve and a fee schedule that met their proposal terms. Tom Engel, Bruce delegated the review of this contract to Tom Engel at Barnes & Thornburg. Tom's reviewed it extensively, as have Sri and myself. We've probably spent 30 to 35 hours on this agreement to be sure that it meets the RDC's needs. We've been through it extensively. With that, you can see that attached to the agreement, there is a scope of work that reflects very much the things that we've discussed for the last 2 years. It's near the back, beyond the signature page. Starts with Appendix A, illustrating the scope of work to be performed. As you can see, I'm going to review it basically because there are critical facets. One of the first things we need to know is a survey of the right-of-way we're going to need. That's included in their scope. A topographic survey gives us elevations for drainage. Property mapping that'll start to show parcel lines of the various parcels and how that identifies to the areas we need to obtain for right-of-way and trail, or right-of-way and sidewalks and pathways, and just general drainage and other things we need for engineering. Title and research, this is going to be huge. Property line review, preliminary roadway design for Record Street, Central Boulevard, and the new roundabout that we've all anticipated. Site layouts, preliminary plans, field checking, public meeting coordination, NDOT coordination, traffic analysis, the barrier wall design, which the preliminary engineering for environmental, all of our wet utilities, the water preliminary design, sanitary design, stormwater design, and then the railroad ditch improvements. We need, as I mentioned to you in previous meetings, we need an engineering plan and that to get competitive bids. And then the bidding documents relative to that. And then the last big one is not only project management, project meetings, but helping us identify grant funding assistance. Of the exclusions you see listed, we'll deal with those as the time comes if they come up needed. One of them we may or may not need, depending on how Sri wishes to handle the traffic impact study. Soon we'll need that for our new boulevard. So I'd like to compliment Brian and Adam and Barnes & Thornburg and all the people who've worked on this. I think that we've covered the bases really adequately. We are ready to give notice to proceed to get this started. One of the things I do want to mention to you, and it's kind of an association with this, if you'll all remember when we had our public meeting, there was a lady came to us and said she was worried about doing her home improvements because she couldn't afford to do them if we were going to tear it down in a day.
Remember it well.
She approached last week again. Joe's got her name. We're going to go meet with her next week.
Excellent.
But we also have Midwest Remediation asking us how we're going to impact their buildings. My response to them is I can't give that answer till they're done with their survey work. So we're ready to give notice to proceed to start this work as soon as you honor us with an approval of HWC's contract. So I've asked Brian to be here today to see if you have any specific questions you'd like to ask of him, have him address. Once that's complete, I would hope that somebody would give a motion to approve this agreement.
Okay?
So if you have any questions of Mr. Polar?
Dan, that some of us just got this today, and I've read through it one time. So if I'm asking something that
That's fine.
It's already covered in here, I apologize for that, but I didn't see it.
Problem.
Can you explain the relationship of our project, our director of engineering, yourself, your HWC, and from a, probably the easiest way to say it, from a project management perspective? The success or failure of a project like this, based on my limited experience, has to do with project management.
Sure.
And you mentioned it earlier, Dan, the project as it begins is never the same at the end.
Yeah.
And it's all about how project management deals with the issues as the project evolves.
Right.
I'm not clear how that relationship's going to work between you, our city representative, Dan, et cetera. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, I think we're all going to work pretty closely because things will change, things will come up that we'll have to adjust, and working with what the city's priorities are and what's important to them, and then also coordinating with NDOT. We've already had one meeting with NDOT, even though we're not under contract, just trying to understand how the reworking of Pendleton Pike will affect everything.
Okay. So Brian, does that mean that you're going to have formal periodic meetings?
Oh, most definitely, yes.
Okay, and they'll be documented, the changes will be documented, and, okay, that's not,
Yeah, we typically,
that's not ordinarily in the scope of work.
It is in there.
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it may be I think it may be the last thing.
But it is there. The other,
Put it more as general because we don't know how many meetings we'll have or what meetings we need to be or at, but
Right, exactly.
the other thing I'd like to point out is Brian is committed to updating you every month at our monthly meeting as to their progress.
Excellent.
Coming and updating this group. Another thing that I'm going to maybe superimpose it, that we came to in this agreement that you may not have time to see, there was a discussion as engineers always want to hold the rights to their plans. They're not our rights to own those plans. But you'll notice in your agreement in bold, we insisted on the insertion of a paragraph that says they can own them, but once we pay the bill, we have the full right indefinitely to use those plans any way we want to use them. So we have covered that base of intellectual property.
Okay.
Other questions?
Other questions?
I had a question. I recall, Dan, that you mentioned that in the proposal, which we have not seen, but in the proposal, there was a commitment to WBE and MBE consultants and subcontractors. I didn't see that in the agreement. Is that in there?
Well, we've
Or-
under the fees on Appendix C and D, we've tried to list the subs and what their fees were. So AQLL is a sub, and they're in there for $30,000. Do have Metric Environmental in there, and then Resolution Group, which is a woman-owned business. They're a sub to us, so their fees aren't specifically mentioned in there. Mm-hmm. With this, because we're in the preliminary engineering phase, we're about at 7%, between 6 and 7% of the total fee are MBE, WBE fees. We anticipate that moving up as we identify issues and identify things. We don't have in here any soil borings. That would be used with an MBE firm. So as we move forward, we anticipate those fees going up.
I wondered if it's appropriate to put on page 3 under number 1, consultants and subcontractors, just maybe a restatement of what you put in the proposal, even a sentence of commitment to WBE and MBE.
We can do that at both,
Consultants and subcontractors, period.
we can do that at both the selection interview and the proposal that's
I
stated.
think that would make it a stronger agreement.
Okay, we can write that in.
Thank you.
And for these,
What kind of wording do you want? Do you just want just a commitment to it? Do you
I
want,
think we'll just do a reference to your interview presentation where you committed to the 7% plus.
and that 7% plus, is that going to be,
Under consultants and subcontractors.
Right here.
how are you going to get that 7% plus was really my question. Is it going to be bid? Is it going to be?
It's already in, they've already engaged those minority
okay,
firms. They're
okay,
already
okay.
engaged. Or they will be engaged,
and they were
subject
part
to
of
us
the
approval.
interview process.
Perfect, okay.
They were at the interview, actually.
And so that would be an at least 7%, is that what,
Be a minimum of 7% minority participation.
thank you.
That's what I was looking for.
Is it okay with you, Brian, if that just gets written in?
I think 7% is yes, will be, I think,
Probably much lower than what it will end up to be. Thank you.
we're going to be higher than
I
that, but
would
I think
hope so.
if you put, that would be fine.
And
I don't want to commit to 30%.
And I'm fine to
when we
leaving
bid
out, I mean,
29 or
quite
something.
frankly, the 7% sounds so low that my recommendation is that you leave the percentage out, but rather have a restatement of the commitment to utilizing MBE,
Okay,
WEE consultants and subcontractors, period. And then we understand that it most likely will be significantly higher than 7%.
okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
And I
We
might,
work with a lot of those firms on other projects, so we understand it's just not a Lawrence thing, and so we try and do that on other projects even when there's not a requirement for MBE or WBE.
Thank you.
I might point out to you that if we spend it all, the total proposed fee at this point in time is $563,125. The good news is that we have that money in the bank anyway, and then we just approved the bonds for that amount, so we'll still have considerable money left to move forward with other work as we move through.
And this takes us to about 50% design on the roadway and water and sewer. It's 100% design on the ditch that runs along the railroad, because we're going to bid that project out. But this gets us far enough down the track to kind of understand what the design
No
requirements are.
pun intended.
Yeah.
The real goal,
But we also have identified, property acquisitions and that kind of thing. So there's going to be a kind of a hard stop, and then we're going to have to go through a bunch of other stuff to keep moving this forward.
the real goal was to identify the property we need, the improvements to be made, and identify amount of money that we need to have funded so we can submit for grant applications. This will do that. Other questions? So what I'm requesting is subject to the addition of the MBE language that Commissioner Sullivan has requested, and an approval of this agreement as presented.
So moved.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the agreement with HWC Engineering, subject to the changes recommended by Commissioner Sullivan. We'll do a roll call vote to approval. For approval, David Blunt,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Gerald Sullivan,
Approved.
and Ray Rohana.
Approved.
So I need to ask Adam a question. Adam, is it as simple as the two copies we have, handwriting into those paragraphs for David's signature and Brian's initials? Can we do that?
Yes, and then you can type it in and then
So we can,
place that page as well.
yeah, so we can get just the signature page taken care of tonight, and then we'll go back and adjust the pages that need to be edited, and we can put it all back together.
That'd be fine. All right.
And can you send that out to us, Joe, when you get that?
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Clifford?
Now that it's approved, we're underway, right?
Yes.
Do we have a schedule?
We're working through that. One of the things I've asked them to do is relax the schedule. So to impress us at the interview, both firms came in with extremely aggressive schedules showing a 4 or 5 month completion, which we didn't think was appropriate based upon all the work and all the reflection and all the thinking that had to do. So we're anticipating, don't let me put words in everybody's mouth that's incorrect, Brian, but I'm anticipating completion of this work sometime after the first of the year at this point in time. But we will get updated.
Sometime after the first of the year, meaning January or February?
Yes.
Or,
Yep.
okay.
And Brian will update us on a monthly basis so we have a good feel of how it's coming and what's appropriate. But I don't want us to be forced.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's helping us a little bit is NDOT's rolled back their construction to late '24, which helps us because we need to have time to define and work through traffic and coordination of what's going to happen with the new boulevard. And it gives us time to get that. And we did have a successful meeting. I was not involved. I think Brian was involved. Sri was involved with NDOT this week, where they recommitted to allow us to have the landscape meetings in the new boulevard.
Excuse me, did they mention when in 2024?
Late 2024.
I was afraid of that. Thank you.
With that, I do not believe I have any, one other deal I did skip over, just check my notes. I skipped over Meyer Plastic and the Impro that's been on the agenda for months. IDEM does have our response that we're hoping is the final solution response, or we're just awaiting for their approval. And with that, I think I've concluded unless anybody has any other questions for me. Yes.
They had said that they plan April 24 bidding.
I'm sorry, repeat the first part, Brett.
So for the bidding of Pendleton Pike?
Yes.
That you were questioning?
Yes.
It looks like they moved it to April of 2024.
Wow, so the work won't be done in 24.
Does not look like it.
But we won't be ready either for all of that part of our project by then. I mean, basically, in my mind, we're cutting off about 8 or 9 months of engineering. We're probably got then you got the ditch and work and all that can go on with that. But we're probably, time we get grant funding and look at the massive amount of money it's going to take to buy real estate, gain right of way, do construction, we're all legitimately biting off a 4 to 5 year project here this afternoon.
You're right.
I mean, might as well be realistic about it.
Yep.
I'm typically not excited about construction, but I'm excited just to see this start.
There's a lot of excitement in the trades district. The folks we met with today are excited about it.
Brian, thank you for that clarification. I was moving things a lot closer than that.
Deputy Mayor Hoffman, do you have anything to contribute to the RDC today? I'm turning it back to you, Commissioner Blount.
All right. Thanks for coming, Mr. Hoffman. Is that what you go by now? Okay. It's just an interesting, okay.
Hard for me, too.
Yeah. I don't want to offend you by calling you chief, so Mr. Hoffman is what I'll call you. All right. Dan, I do have a question about, I saw the email that we're all set for the free G tour.
Oh, great. Yeah, I meant to bring that up. 2:30. I believe that's the 7th, is it not?
It is, no, it can't be the 7th because it's the day of our next Redevelopment Commission meeting, which
9th, isn't it?
I believe it's the 9th. Yes.
Okay.
June the 9th, yes.
At 2:30, we'll walk through, and Mike Webster will be there personally to thank you and show you through. We moved it to 2:30 to give us 45 minutes or an hour and comfortably get back here for our meeting.
Excellent.
Okay. Perfect. And is there anything we need to do prior to that or be prepared for? Okay. That sounds good. Does anyone else have anything for the commission today? All right.
For all your work, Adam.
Pleasure.
If there's,
Mr. Friedge, you're always so quiet down the end. Do you have anything for the group?
Not today.
I might say, since Richard's benefit here, that one of the things we did pitch in our walkthrough this morning is they're very short on and could benefit from interns and a working relationship with McKinsey Trade Center, and Joe agreed to bridge that.
yeah, that'd be great for the schools as well, so.
Yeah, no, I know, there'll be significant interest from the school system for that.
All right, if there's no other business to come before the commission, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second for adjournment. We'll do a roll call vote. David Blunt,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thank you very much.